So hey guys, today we're going to be talking about deck design. Specifically, we're going to be talking about how a lot of decks have the same kind of vibe. So to start off, we're going to go talk about a deck that has a little bit of a different vibe. So we're going to be talking about Therion Pier, I guess. So let's say you're playing Therion up here, and you'll notice something very interesting to begin with. So the first thing is that you actually don't have a way to really special summon any of your, or not special summon, any way to normal summon your monsters because they're all super high level. And that means you have to actually open 2 cards to actually be able to do your play if of like any type of play. And they have to be certain cards. So you want uh, some card that is able to send a Therion, and then you will need a Therion as well. So we have ideas of if I have Therion charge, I can technically draw into a Therion. So at minimum, if you do get a little bit lucky, you would need a Therion. So let's say we have Therion Duke in hand, plus charge, we can discard charge or discard a Yol here. Wait, does it discard? No, it sends to the graveyard apparently. So it doesn't work under macro, funnily enough. But aside from that, charge effect, Yol gets sent. Draw 2. If I draw into a Therion, then I can just special summon that Therion. So let's say I have Boline, special summon Boline, and then that would be how I form my special summon. Not really much of like a combo per se. I mean, if you consider like the luck of top decking this, that could be a combo in its own sort of way. But yeah, we have that idea. And then for our boss monsters, we have like Therion King Regulus and Therion Irregular, basically. So Irregular has a board wipe. If you discard a Endless Engine Gyro system, that will destroy all cards your opponent controls, and you can add a Therion Discoloseum Gyro system through a kind of jank method where if your monster would be destroyed by battle, you can send a Therion card or one Endless Engine Argyro system from your deck to the graveyard instead. So we can send Endless Engine Argyro system here, and then we have 2 different ways to kind of, well, actually, no, we only have 1 way to get to Endless Engine Argyro system from here. We just use the graveyard effect to add Argyro system from the graveyard, shuffle back a Therion card, yeah. And then that will get us this card, and this card can be summoned pretty easily. If we send a Regular to the graveyard, we can special summon this. Well, if we equip it from the graveyard, we can special summon it from the back row. And then we can activate like Endless Engine or Gyro System to pop our opponent's cards. And it's all like kind of neat, right? Except for the fact that, of course, like the consistency is kind of bad because, you know, all of these guys can be completely dead in hand and do absolutely nothing because, you know, they're high level monsters that require a condition to be met to be able to even summon them in the first place, disregarding what they do, which what they do is kind of just moderate. It's a little bit mid, so the payoff isn't that insane. They could have a little bit more payoff in some regards, but aside from that, you know, the playstyle is kind of pretty cool, having the equivalent of all of your main deck monsters nearly being like close to on par with like boss monsters. So for example, like Bol'ain looks pretty unassuming, of course, but we also have the idea of, let's say, Bol'ain equipping a Lily Borea or equipping a Regulus, and then all of a sudden this goes from just like a kind of mid 2.1k guy to a 2.8k guy because we have attack gain here. Then we have the idea that we can negate artifact with Therion King Regulus. And then we have Bol'ain's effect to pop. So this is actually 2 interactions tied to this 1 card. And Therion Dukiel, also like normally kind of mid. Alasia, I'll just say that this card's actually garbage. I don't even want to get into that card, but yeah, we have Therion Dukiel ability, gain 700, also 2.8k attacker after you equip a Therion monster to this. And then you also have the effect of the protection effect. While you control an equip card, Therion monsters you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. and then whatever you have equips effects. So in this case, it could be Lily Berea. You can then continuously every turn add you a Therian card. So we could add like this Colosseum for potentially more Therian monsters. We have the idea of grabbing Cross for like a negate. So yeah, I mean, one of the strongest combinations you can get is King Regulus with Foom, and then you have Therion Discoloseum. Or not Discoloseum, you have like Therion Cross with Argyro system in the graveyard. Like it's a bit specific, but you have the idea of Foom effect to bounce itself, and then Therion King Regulus discarding the Foom to act as a negate, and then you have idea of adding a card back with Endless Engine Argyro system, so you can do like Therion Discoloseum gets sent by Lily Berea to then allow you to activate a Therion Discoloseum again. In fact, the same copy, returning Argyro system to the deck. So like all of that stuff, pretty cool. And like the playstyle of this deck is going to be unique here, actually, because these guys are simultaneously kind of boss monsters, and the way you use the battle phase becomes a lot more important here, where you have to decide, do I want to commit to the battle phase now, or do I want to kind of push for my combo and searches more? Or do I want to do it like really early, right? Or we just go into the guy, go into battle? There are benefits, of course, to uh, not destroying your opponent's monsters and kind of like uh, using the protection effect of the Skull Sim here, and then destroying certain cards by battle, or even crashing your own monsters to then add a Therian monster in your graveyard. So we have ideas of like, we discard Lily Brea, equip it, send it to the graveyard again via its own effect, and then we add Lily Brea to the hand, allowing us to special summon Lily Brea because we have a different Therian monster in the graveyard. So in this case, that could be like Ein, for example, or Yugioh, which we might be able to crash. So we have ideas of like normal summon Ash Blossom Joe Spring, attack into our opponent's monster, protect Ash Blossom Joe Spring. Then we have Yule attack over something, add back Lily Berea. Then we could synchro summon or link summon using Ash Blossom plus Yule, and then special summon Lily Berea to make sure we have a Therian monster for our Therian Cross, for example. We have that kind of in-depth line. But then, of course, if we then start to look at the consistency issues, it's kind of like really painful. But all right, now let's go to like a recent meta deck and go with like, let's say we have Maliss, right? How does Maliss play? Well, let's summarize this very simply. You summon guy summon guy, you go into your extra deck, and then boom, you have your end board. Now let's go to ryzeal. Your main deck guys are useless for the most part. I think ryzeal is one of the archetypes in a long time, like one of the newer ones that have some card where it's actually useful for going second. In this case, we have like X ryzeal, which is something. But if we disregard X ryzeal, then we have the exact same playstyle as Maliss, where we have essentially our deck is just summon guy, summon more guys, and these guys are actually all completely useless and do nothing. So if we don't go into our extra deck guys, our main deck guys actually genuinely do nothing, right? And they're worthless. But yeah, basically summon guy, summon more guys, go into extra deck guys, which are your main guys. In which case, Therion kind of breaks the mold here by being just special summon your boss monster guys immediately, skipping this step, and also playing completely differently in that regard. But yeah, so far I believe there's only been one deck where you only play big guys in your main deck that has been like, I guess you would call it like meta tier, and that would be like Elblick, and that was played as stun. I don't remember legitimately another deck that was kind of like just only big guys in the main deck that was actually kind of viable or even like meta. I mean, like with Therion, it's playable, but the consistency is so bad, you're losing even in essentially a single player game. So that's kind of terrible. But yeah, ryzeal, same kind of deal. And ritual decks, I mean, you can kind of give them the pass for this because I guess the ritual guys are kind of supposed to be the boss monsters, not so much the main deck guys. So ritual, fine. If we go to fusion, there's actually a lot more going on here where it is still kind of the same thing, but with the fusion guys, I'd say a little bit better, where we have like Fallen of Elbaz. You can kind of use him as removal to go into like one of these guys. You have like Mirror Jade, for example, right? That's chill. Then we have also there was something else, right? In terms of main deck guys, I believe there was something else. Not really coming to mind right now, but yeah. With Branded, Fallen of Elbaz, those guys, they have some main deck things they can do as well. Like I guess Pistols are kind of branded cards, so I mean, if you want to count that, that adds to their playstyle a bit here. And their main deck cards are not going to be useless. I guess another fusion archetype where their main deck guys are not really fully useless and have some flexibility would be my brain getting fried here, but we have like Chimera, where we have Mirror Sword Knight and Cornfield Battle with the effects to kind of like protect your monsters, which, you know, it's not like that insane per se, but your main deck guys are doing something, which you can't say that about like the mouse cards. I mean, closest things you have to doing something would be for the mouse card specifically, you have like Dormouse effect to boost, and then you'd run over a guy with like Chessy Cat because Dormouse gives you a 600 attack boost, putting this to 2.1k attack, allowing you to actually get over Ash Blossom to a Spring. Because these guys cannot even get over Ash Blossom to a Spring unless you resolve Dormouse. But believe it or not, well, not by an attack anyways. You're wait, no, you can't even out Ash Blossom Joe Spring in any other way if you're not allowed to access your extra deck because MTP07 doesn't even banish a card unless you control a Malice Link monster on like the resolution of this effect. So yeah, the main deck cards for a lot of decks, notably, like we have this playstyle of just summon guy, summon other guy, and then you go into your extra deck monsters, and the summon guys just don't matter, and it's much more focused on like your extra deck monsters and getting those guys out. But you know, you don't really get that connection with your cards this way, I'd say. Where you know you have like Dark Magician, which is pretty cool, I guess. You know, like a lot of people like Dark Magician, right? But realistically, at the end of the day, this is kind of a brick in the hand, and you don't really want to see this guy. But you know, Dark Magician is cool. He's a big guy, big beard, 2.5k, and Eternal Soul pretty cool in the concept that we have like Dark Magician, and it makes Dark Magician like semi-viable, but not like too super strong. Because Dark Magician becomes unaffected by your opponent's card effect, so you cannot write Geki, Dark Magician. You cannot like do anything to Dark Magician in terms of card effects, but you can run it over by battle still. So if we just consider just Eternal Soul plus Dark Magician, like that's pretty cool, right? But if we consider like the viability of this, you would somehow need Eternal Soul set. You'd need access to Dark Magician, which is like kind of annoying. And then this doesn't even like if we just consider these two cards, that this isn't enough for like a full strategy. Even if you throw in like what is it? Dark Magical Circle. This doesn't fully get you there because it's just like one banish, and then you have like an unaffected guy that's medium sized. You know, he's not that small, but he's not that big. He is still bigger than the Malice guys, so you wouldn't be able to run him over with any of your main deck monsters. So you would still have to contend with the Dark Magician with like another boss monster at the very least, like even disregarding like the circle here. But yeah, but the playstyle of these decks, like it feels a lot less personal to me at least. You know, maybe it's because I just prefer big boss monsters like Therian King Regulus or just the Therian monsters in general, and we have like Dark Magician, which is fine. Decks I did enjoy kind of messing around with, like, include Fire King and Unchained. We do have some big guys in the main deck, and yeah, maybe I just like having some kind of massive high level monsters in the main deck. Yeah, maybe that's just my preference. I don't know, but there's also just the lack of variety to an extent. If we actually go here, we can go ultra rare, and then we can go press not here. By I think it was default order, and then we flip the order, right? No, wait, is that right? Or do we just scroll down from here? And this should show the most recent cards, right? No, this shows a weird kind of card order. I don't know. What if we do by rarity? Is it still by the default card order? Seems like they have some hidden kind of number here. Well, what if we do descending? Is it still the same order here? Oops. Um. Okay. Number owned? That's not really useful. Alright, back to default, I guess, then. Wait, not default. What did I have this by before? I think it was like obtained order. But the other obtained order. Cool. Got back to it. But, yeah, I mean, a lot of decks playstyles just becomes, you summon small guy, summon more small guy, go into big guy. That's basically it. And that playstyle is usually what like every single meta deck consists of at this point in time. Like, actually, it'd be faster to just check. But for example, with Tearlament, your main deck guys were at least a little bit more interesting because they had synergy with certain other cards that made them like a little bit more interesting. So you have like your Solia that you would play in your main deck. You have your what was it again? Tearlament's Crime. That would be a little bit interesting. We have Meta Noise, which is like a Book of Moon, and then you have the field spell. You have your Perlarino, so you can go like Perlarino effect, shuffle, or no, you shuffle back a guy with the Ishizu cards, and then that will trigger the Perlarino because you shuffled back a Tearlament. So this will be a pop even if you don't get to do combo, right? You still have these options, and honestly, the only problem I had with this with Tearlament was specifically the Solic, because you'd always when we had 3 Solic, you would always open Solic pretty much, or have some way into Solic, or you'd be able to discard Solic for things if you didn't have it, or if you didn't have the things, and you'd be able to add back Solic from the graveyard sometimes. And then you have like the idea of Crime plus Solic being like really stupid to deal with. And so Solic is just a really strong card in general, being like a legit permanent negate for some reason. But yeah. If we were to compare this to like what Malice does, your main deck monsters do a whole lot of nothing with your traps, which I don't know, you could consider that a good thing in terms of like balance, that it's not stronger, because it could be stronger if it did work like that. But also at the same time, I mean, it's kind of more boring because uh, the game is like, well, how do I say this? Well, I guess we'll just say it's a lot more boring for the time being. We go more into that, but with Malice, you have essentially a starter, and then you have some kind of BS extender that you can't really deal with, like Malice and Underground, for example. So we have your mouse, Malice and Underground, and if you do ever end up getting combo, you basically always have full combo with Malice. and then you have all of your interactions, or you're kind of like, yeah, I figured out the term. You're kind of like a feast or famine, where you either have like a billion negates or you have absolutely nothing at all, and you barely have a game here. Where uh, you either can stop the mouse player, but if you don't, they just have a million negates and game over. But if you do, the game is over for them, and they have absolutely nothing to contest you with or do anything, because they're kind of all in on this combo because their engine doesn't convert to anything. So a good example, I think, of a deck where it's a lot more well balanced and kind of like, I guess the term was mid-ranged, would be like Centurion. I prefer this a little bit more, where we have the idea of, let's say we open stand up Centurion, we're going to discard a card, doesn't really matter what the card is, then we can special summon Primera, right? And because of, well, let's say your opponent is able to stop the Primera search here with, let's say, Ash Blossom Geospring, and then you have a few different options that you could have went through to kind of still have interaction. So with this line, if you start stand up Centurion, a lot of the time you will actually go Trudea first, so you have Trudea in the back row, so you have idea of using Trudea to special summon Trudea next turn, so you can use stand up Centurion effect to then go into Legacia, so we have pop at least if our combo gets interrupted here. So idea of stand up Centurion, place Trudea back row, Trudea special summons itself, places itself in the back row, then places Primera, special summon Primera. And then with this line, if we get interrupted here and don't have combo, we still have the effect to make Legacia, essentially. And then that'll be still an interruption. And we don't have like a feast or famine situation, and it's a little bit more well balanced. But, you know, if we have like Dormouse, every interaction with Dormouse, either you completely stop the Dormouse or the Dormouse goes into full combo basically, and those are the only two routes available here, and there's nothing in between. And of course, if we just consider solo Dormouse, Dormouse will never really convert to anything if it's stopped, right? But here we have the potential, like it's not even guaranteed, because we could technically just, if we special summon Primera first, which there are some cases where you might want to do this for like specific reasons, it like kind of varies, but I guess you have Trudea and Handle Ray, so you can normal summon Trudea, for example. That would be not too bad, but yeah, aside from that, you would probably just do the Trudea line most of the time, but yeah. We still have an interruption despite being interrupted ourselves, but it's not that oppressive. It's kind of fair, I would dare say, even. And Therian actually has aspects to this as well, where, you know, we could reasonably go like special summon Therian King Regulus, try to resolve Lily Brea. If I don't really want to resolve Lily Brea's effect that much, you know, I can just hold on to this, and then we have the idea of Therian King Regulus negating with Lily Brea. Or if we have Lily Brea equipped with Therian King Regulus, we can just hold on to this effect as well, and just trade off like for Ash Blossom Geospring in some cases. So maybe we have like a Foom in hand, for example, and we're just happy sending Therian King Regulus here. Which, oddly enough, you know, this can happen, this can come up, right? So, yeah, I mean, just having better main deck guys and able to kind of utilize them better for going second, I think that would be a huge step to the game being better. Like, this card is honestly pretty garbage, so let's see. Lancer. Let's see if I can find it. Lancer. Is it not called Lancer? Was it like called Spearman? No, wait, Ghost Lancer. So we have Ghost Lancer here. It has the fact of, if only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. So this type of effect, if it was just slapped onto a monster, so let's say, well, it wouldn't be necessary for Maliss because all of their guys essentially allow you to special summon more guys. But if we have a different deck, like let's say what could actually use this effect to have an additional extender? You know what? Literally, I think Ashen could use this, where, let's say, with Priestess, if your opponent just controlled a monster or a card or something, and you were able to special summon the Priestess. So maybe the card text would say something like, if your opponent controls uh, uh, a monster that they own, you can special summon Priestess from the hand just to prevent some cheese with like certain cards that special summon to your opponent's side of the field. Then then going second Priestess would be a little bit better than it is currently, but it wouldn't be like excessive or OP or anything, right? Some decks could just use a little bit of oomph or a little bit of gas. Like even Vanquish Soul could honestly have used this a little bit. Like it wouldn't have even been that helpful, but if like Mad Love could be special summoned to your side of the field, if your opponent like went first, that'd be huge. I think that makes cards like Evenly Matched kind of well designed because there will be like an extra turn you have to give up your battle phase. Your opponent is never going to get lethal if you try to resolve Evenly Matched, like whether it resolves or not. Like that's pretty cool. And your opponent's end board is not completely destroyed, and they get to keep one card. So lots of things to think about with like an Evenly Matched. But yeah, just being able to do a little bit more if you're going second is pretty nice. So for example, with Therion, these guys have big stat line, so you're able to abuse the stat line more. Well, abuse, I guess we can use that term. Abuse their stat line by going into battle phase and running over your opponent's potential like negates and such. So for example, with Therion King Regulus, this is able to threaten Baron de Fleur and running over Baron de Fleur by battle, because if it has a Therion monster equipped, this will go plus 700, putting you at 3.5k attack, whereas Baron is at like 3k, allowing you to do that specifically if you are going second, versus if you're going first, where that's not a factor at all, right? And just having like a bigger stat line like this is kind of an advantage in some sense. So if we just had like an archetype where we do still have like level 4 monsters kind of spamming themselves out, but they have like big stat lines kind of close to like 3.1k level, or not level, 3.1k attack, then that would be a little bit more interesting, because you'd have to worry about their individual monsters more, and you'd have to kind of think about that and think about like if you want to sacrifice a monster just so your opponent does not have a battle phase later, like that I think would elevate the game a lot. But also, of course, there is still the issue of, but what about the new players? And to an extent, I think just add better resources for new players to learn the game. You don't need to necessarily dumb the game down for them, because at some point, if you do get new players, they will eventually become veteran players. That's kind of how it goes. And if the game is kind of like trash at that point for the veteran player, like it'll be trash at some point for the beginner or newer players as well. So that is an aspect to consider as well, I think, to some extent. Just having some beginner friendly decks so they can move on to like more advanced decks, that's also like kind of an idea. I mean, it depends, but you have to like really think of the scope and really think of a lot of different things. But yeah, but for the general health of the game, I think like just going first, not being a pretty much insta win or auto win if your opponent, or I guess the going second player in this case, does not open hand traps, then yeah, I mean the game is just pretty much over, because card maths. So let's say we'll go with Malice for this example. Dormouse converts to let's say 9 interactions if left unchecked, or Malice combo just in general leads to around 9 interactions. So if they get Malice combo, how many cards do you have in hand at max? 6 cards. Your opponent has 9 interactions, not including hand traps. So yeah, you don't even have like, for every single card I activate, they can activate an effect back on my turn, which is absolutely wild, right? In fact, in some cases they could even activate 2 effects per 1 card, which is just not mathing. But yeah, let's say in this case they can activate 2 cards, so we're at like -6 cards basically if we were to compare our cards here. So it looks pretty unwinnable, you know. But if we of course hand trap our opponent, they could have just a few hand traps, so like 2 interactions, and then we have 6 cards where, you know, 2, 6, 4 maths basically, right? So yeah, I mean, card design kind of stalen, and then like in terms of just like main deck monsters, they're kind of also somewhat stale and kind of function very much the same. Like summon small guy, summon other small guy, and then we summon the big guy, whatever that may be. That pattern is a bit like annoying, a bit repetitive. So playing like Therian is a fresh of or a breath of fresh air. And I mean, like Centurion kind of plays the same, but it plays like unique from every other deck, which is a thing I do like about Centurion. I don't think any other deck plays like Centurion, right? And Centurion isn't actually like broken, but it's also like uh not weak necessarily, right? I think it's a fairly fair deck and requires like a decent amount of solid piloting and knowledge. It's not like a super interesting deck to play though necessarily either, which is kind of weird, but you know, it is what it is. In terms of like if I were to play a deck competitively, just off of like enjoyment and like the play style of the deck in general, like not considering like deck strength, I think like I would much prefer playing something like Therion, Centurion, or anything like that. Not so much Memento, because doing that combo like 50 times, that's not fun. It's like 22 steps, bro. Like, even if my opponent has no responses, like, we don't even have to consider that yet. That combo takes a long time to do, man. And, yeah. Malice, this combo, you're just doing the same combo over and over again, and that's like almost a different topic on its own, where uh even like disregarding the fact that the combo interactions and how that interacts with like the going second player, and how you could argue that's unhealthy, but like even just doing the combo line is just like basically the same no matter what hand you open. It's just like the same thing over and over again, where you're doing like special summon Dormouse, and then you go into like Red Ransom, banish Red Ransom, special summon back Red Ransom, and then you draw like with Chessy Cat, draw with White Binder, and then that's your like turn. And maybe if you're feeling spicy, you can throw a Heart Scripter into your end board, and that there's no like real variation or anything you really change about your end board, which, you know, just like combo variations and adjustments like that type of thing is very up my alley, and something like I really enjoy doing with some decks, where I consider like, oh, I can get some information. So my opponent is actually playing this deck. How do I adjust my end board to play around that deck a little bit better? And that being game determinative, like that is a type of thing I really enjoy with like more flexible combos. Like maybe I have like this interaction which is better into this deck. So for example, I can make one non-targeted removal, like some card like that, which is going to be really good against, let's say, Vanquish Soul specifically, and that is what I'm facing off against, and I might have the information on this. Whereas like in a different scenario, it'd be like better to go into like 2 forms of removal instead of just the one. But those forms of removal are like maybe targeted, so it's not as good into, let's say, Vanquish Soul or whatever deck I'm against. That's fine or better against targeting, right? Or maybe it's just like one monster negate or something, and that might be better against certain decks. Like, you know, just a little bit of variation in that kind of sense. And maybe if I change the combo up, I have, let's say, a spell trap negate or removal for spell traps, And the deck in mind when I think of like a lot of this is probably like DDD, being able to go into like certain cards. So we have ideas of do I make Siegfried here, or do I make this other card to bring back like uh, well, it's not like, do I bring back, let's say, Orthrus, or do I bring back from my graveyard my copy of Griffin? And then Griffin can have the effect to add the back row of Headhunt, or I can special summon Orthrus to special summon like Siegfried. And we have like ideas of if my opponent has like Kaiju or Lava Golem, Headhunt is going to be a little bit better because I'll still have at least one DD of some sort, and I'll be able to use Headhunt as removal. But if my opponent is going to have like some kind of back row card I must negate for whatever reason, like let's say Branded Fusion, maybe, I don't know, or an evenly matched, I guess. Yeah, evenly matched is pretty deadly. Then I might prefer like Siegfried in those cases. And maybe if I'm playing against a back row deck, I might decide I want to go into High King Genghis first, and then we go into Curse King Siegfried to play around that a little bit better. And there's like variation to how this combo would be done, kinda, right? Versus just going like, okay, I'm going second on Malice, so I will just do the going first combo, but second basically. And then at the very end, instead of going into like I don't even remember what you went to at this point, like Firewall Dragon, I will change it out to like Access Code Talker instead of whatever, and then go for lethal because this is like 5.3k and you get like 2-3 pops or something, and then you have 3.1k guy, I believe, right? Something like that, 3.1k plus 5.3k, I think, right? Or is this just the 3k guy? What was this at? No, it's 2.9. I mean, either way, it adds up to 8,000. So it's like pop 3, walk in with 8,200 damage, I think, right? And then that's game. Like, the one thing you change from the going first combo is you basically went into Access Code Docker. Cool. That for sure is a deck. Versus, like, if I wasn't in against back row with DD, I would have to consider, okay, well, do I want to make, like, maybe, we have the idea to make Machinex early, right? So we can kind of make this earlier if, wait, there he is. We can make Machinex earlier to run into a guy, like just go battle, and then run over a guy. And then if our opponent tries to activate some card effects, we can still trade another card via activating this effect for here to detach to or destroy a dark contract card you control, to attach that card to this card to remove it off the field. And maybe that's threatening to remove something or protecting you from like an Apollousa, because this actually works against Apollousa surprisingly well. So yeah, just actually having to use your brain a little bit, seeing like what tools you have, and actually having tools to begin with, because like even if you wanted to kind of play like this with Malice, it's like, what are you going to do realistically? Like the most spicy thing you could do with Malice is maybe you link off Lingribo with like another monster to make SB Lil Knight. That'd be the spiciest variation ever. But otherwise, you're just going to keep activating cards if you have them to just make access code and then go for lethal, because that's like the best line pretty much. So yeah, the game is kind of like staling in some sorts of ways, in my opinion, and I would prefer just like better natural kind of going second ability. Like you don't have to even go as far as to give a deck like straight up going second effects. Like with Tenpai, you have like just the brute force method of during your main phase, 1. Fire Dragon monsters you control are unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. Instead of this, couldn't we just had done like some chain blocking stuff to kind of like play around some of our opponent's effects? Couldn't we have just added some elements to play around our opponent's effects instead of literally this monkey business? Like Tenpai, like yeah, just like as going second deck since we haven't gotten any really recently. This had, in my opinion, a lot more potential than just being, just try to negate and check if my opponent has Ash Blossom Joy Spring or my either Sangan Summoning or whatever the other card was called. My brain's like not working right now. Sangan Kaiman. So yeah, just like being Ash check the deck, like what's the point of this when we could have had more interaction and kind of or like skilled play here, I think, right? This is kind of just remembering your OTK lines and Ash check the deck. So yeah. How could we change this? I guess like we could have a lot of the same effects here, but maybe we could have some funny triggers when we send the cards, you know? And then that could enable some chain blocking. We could even have like a main deck kind of negate card where if your opponent does something in response, you can negate and then the card has some other usage as well. Like Magistus has a similar-ish card. It's not like going to be exactly the same, but we have Lacrima, where we have the effect of if you control Magistus or Witchcrafter monster, send one spellcaster monster or one spell from your deck to the graveyard. So we have this effect. And then this also has the other effect of when your opponent activates a card or effect, special summon one Magistus or Witchcrafter monster from your hand or deck. So we could just change this a little bit to something like, let's say this card cannot be negated if your opponent activates specifically a monster effect. You can special summon a Tenpai monster from the deck. Just period. Guaranteed Tenpai monster. And then the other effect on it is going to be something like, let's see what would be generally useful for an OTK deck. Just add, I guess, like a Rhoda. Add a Tenpai monster from your deck to your hand, like that's fine. But not as well. Would it be a quick effect? I guess it would have to be a quick effect, which is fine because then you'd still be able to do the Tenpai combo kind of with this in battle phase, interestingly enough. But you would just have to specifically add Genroku for it, which I think is like fine enough. And that is kind of Kaiman, but a little bit different, just adjusted. And we don't have the fact to special summon from hand anymore. But I mean, if you changed the field spell and had Kaiman do that instead, like, I don't think that would even be that bad, would it? Does this have another effect at the moment anyways? No, not really. That's just a little bit of rebalancing, I guess, to an extent. It's similar, but not quite the same. But still pretty solid, I think. And you wouldn't be getting Ash checked as hard, but you would gain an additional effect if you're essentially, well, I guess you would change the effect to, instead of just being straight up a monster effect activating, it would have to be a monster effect on field. So it's a little bit more fair. So if you're going first, you can't just do that if your opponent is activating a Ash Blossom Joy Spring on you, because that feels like too punishing. So probably just a monster effect on field. And it's not without weaknesses too, because spell traps would be fairly effective into the strategy. And you only have a limited amount of starters, so Rhoda-ing will only get you so far, right? So, yeah, I mean, a lot you could do, just even with existing archetypes, if you kind of rework them a little bit, they could be so much more interesting, and their going second abilities could be like more dynamic or useful in certain ways. Like even the Yubel stuff has like some interesting stuff with specifically Phantom of Yubel's effect here to change your opponent's effect, and changing specifically only a monster effect. Like if we just look at this effect by itself, that's pretty sick. Like there's a lot of other things regarding this card, like the special summon is not once per turn, which is like kind of dumb, and the fact that this recycles the cards kind of also dumb in a sort of way. There's a lot of dumb things about this. Like, resolving this card allows you to just summon the card again, basically. It's just absolutely abhorrent and just dumb, so you can't even trade this. Like, in the same way you could trade Rukalos, so if we have a Rukalos on field and then we were to get negated by that Rukalos, it still doesn't feel absolutely terrible. Like, it still feels worthwhile to activate Nibiru, or in this case, like a card that we would lose, because it still trades off one of the potential negates off of the Rukalos, because Rukalos can only special summon itself back once. But Phantom of Yubel, you can recycle your Phantom of Yubels more or less, right? I mean, yeah, you can do that with the field spell, and then with Phantom of Yubel, you can just special summon this again and again and again, pretty limitlessly. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of do that with Rukalos being able to like shuffle the Rukalos back and special summoning it, but still different. And it's not like if Rukalos is sent the second time, Rukalos just stays in the grid. It doesn't really do anything. If you did the same crap with Phantom of Yubel, the immediate next turn you would just summon another Phantom of Yubel. So, yeah, I mean, when you take certain things too far, I mean, it becomes like a little bit problematic. But if we have certain cards not taken far enough, it just becomes unplayable. So it'd be nice if we strike the balance here. Like, honestly, I think Centurion is very well balanced, and it is possible to have some cards at the very least that are very well balanced and strike a good balance between like being strong enough to play consistently and also fair enough for your opponent to still be able to attempt something. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.